You're listening to Chapter by Chapter Classics, the short-form classic literature podcast where each episode walks you through a few chapters of a great book. Previously in Dracula, Lucy's illness grew worse, Van Helsing arrived, the men tried repeated blood transfusions, and Dracula's attacks continued until Lucy died. In this episode, we're covering chapters 13 through 16, where Van Helsing begins revealing the truth, the Bloofer Lady stories appear, and the characters finally confront what Lucy has become.
Usually when you picture a Victorian gentleman in literature, there's this really rigid expectation of just extreme restraint.
Oh, absolutely, the stiff upper lip.
Right. You picture them sitting in some, velvet-draped parlor, sipping tea, discussing the weather, and just violently repressing absolutely every emotion they have.
Yeah, I mean, it's a society entirely built on order, right?
Yeah.
Just categorization and keeping the messy parts of human nature locked firmly behind closed doors.
Exactly. But then you step into the world of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and suddenly that teacup just completely shatters against the wall.
It really does.
Because, we are looking at a narrative landscape where a wealthy, grieving nobleman abandons literally every single societal norm to pick up a heavy blacksmith's hammer and drive a 3-foot wooden stake through the heart of the woman he loves.
Yeah, it is the absolute definition of a paradigm shift. And it happens in this incredibly pivotal, just really compressed section of the original text.
Which is exactly what we are tearing into in today's deep dive. Welcome, everyone. We are looking directly at the raw materials today, the journals, letters, and newspaper clippings that make up chapters 13 through 16.
And this is the exact pivot point, really, where the kind of foggy, creeping mystery of the earlier chapters finally crystallizes into, actionable, bloody horror.
Yeah, we're talking bizarre newspaper headlines, a lead coffin that basically defies the laws of physics, and a gruesome act of love that will just completely change how you view these characters.
But to really understand that shift, though, Stoker forces us to kind of sit with the immediate, very human aftermath of death first.
Right, before any of the supernatural stuff fully kicks in.
Exactly. Chapter 13 opens right after the tragic deaths of Lucy Westenra and her mother, and the atmosphere at their funerals is just suffocating. It isn't supernatural yet, but it is deeply unsettling.
Unsettling is putting it mildly. There's this moment with the Undertaker that actually gave me chills.
Oh, the Undertaker, yeah.
Right. He comes out of the death chamber and remarks to Dr. Seward in this highly confidential, almost greasy professional tone that Lucy makes a very beautiful corpse.
Yeah, he even says it's a privilege to attend to her, noting she will do credit to their establishment. It's so morbid.
It's awful.
It really highlights the kind of morbid commercialization of death in the Victorian era, but Stoker is doing something much more sinister with it.
Right, because knowing what we know about vampires, that isn't just a throwaway morbid joke. It's a massive waving red flag.
Exactly. She doesn't look dead because she's not.
She is transitioning.
Yeah, that physical preservation completely defies natural decay. But while Lucy's body is unnaturally preserved, the psychological state of the men around her is rapidly decaying.
Oh, yeah. The strain is totally breaking them.
Just look at what happens right after the funeral. Van Helsing and Dr. Seward share a carriage, and Van Helsing, this brilliant stoic professor, just completely loses his mind.
He has this bizarre, hysterical, laughing and crying fit. He's literally laughing until he cries, and then, crying until he laughs again.
It's a total breakdown.
Yeah. If I'm Dr. Seward in that carriage, sitting next to my revered mentor while he essentially has a breakdown, I'm seriously considering committing him to my own asylum.
Well, Seward actually tries to scold him, basically saying, pull yourself together, man. We just left a funeral.
Right. Seward is just deeply offended by the breach of decorum.
He is. But Van Helsing's reaction is a profound psychological release. He calls it King Laugh.
King Laugh. It's such a weird phrase.
It is. But he tells Seward that King Laugh comes when the heart is heavy and the strain is simply too great to bear. You have to consider the immense emotional burden Van Helsing is carrying here.
Because he knows, right, or at least he strongly suspects.
He strongly suspects what is actually happening to Lucy, that her soul is in peril of eternal damnation. But he has been fighting this battle completely in the dark.
Entirely alone, with absolutely no one believing him.
Right. And he just watched the monster win the first round.
Yeah.
That pressure has to go somewhere.
The laughter is just a survival mechanism for a mind that's been stretched to its absolute limit.
Precisely.
Okay, But contrast that with Jonathan and Mina Harker over in Chapter 14 because they have a completely inverted experience with trauma.
Oh, they really do.
Yeah, they are now married, and Jonathan has just become a full partner at his law firm. On paper, I mean, his life is perfect.
A huge step up in the world, securing his future and Mina's.
But internally, Jonathan is just a complete wreck. He survived his time at Castle Dracula, but the trauma left him with a severe brain fever.
Yeah, he genuinely doesn't know if the horrific things he saw in Transylvania were real or if he just suffered a massive psychotic break.
Exactly. He is just paralyzed by the fear that his own mind is broken.
And that uncertainty is destroying his agency. He can't move forward because he doesn't even know what reality he's living in.
Which is why Mina's decision to share Jonathan's Transylvanian journal with Van Helsing is such a game changer.
It's the turning point for him.
Right. Van Helsing reads it, realizes Jonathan actually holds the key to understanding the Count, and he confirms to Jonathan face to face it was all true.
Every impossible blood-soaked detail.
And this is the paradox that just fascinates me. Finding out that literal blood-sucking monsters actually exist makes Jonathan feel better.
Yeah, he literally writes in his diary that it makes a new man of him. The mental anguish just vanishes instantly.
I compare it to the immense relief of finally getting a diagnosis for a mystery illness.
That's a great analogy.
Right. Like, imagine you've been suffering for months, your hair is falling out, you have migraines, nobody believes you, and you start to genuinely think you are just losing your mind.
You're second-guessing everything.
Exactly. Then a doctor looks at your chart and says, you have an incredibly rare, highly dangerous disease. I mean, the diagnosis itself is terrifying, but the relief is overwhelming.
At least you know you aren't crazy.
Exactly. At least there's a name for the monster.
And that validation completely restores his agency. Jonathan writes, now that I know, I am not afraid even of the Count.
He transforms from a passive victim suffering in silence into an active participant who is ready for war.
Which is incredibly fortunate because the war is no longer contained to a castle in Transylvania.
No, it is not.
The brief, mournful piece of the funerals is just totally shattered by what we see in the newspaper clippings.
Yeah, we move from this very private, intimate grief into a super public terror playing out right on the streets of London.
Stoker utilizes clippings from the Westminster Gazette to ground the supernatural in absolute mundane reality.
It's so effective.
It really is. You're reading a daily paper, and wedged between, like, the local news and the weather are reports of a string of incidents on Hampstead Heath.
Which is right near where Lucy is buried.
Exactly.
And it says small children are straying from home at twilight. When the police find them the next morning, they are incredibly weak, a little bit torn, and they all tell the exact same story.
They were lured away by a Bloofer Lady.
Right, which is just a child's lisping mispronunciation of beautiful lady.
It's just so eerie.
It really is. And the hospital doctors notice these children all have tiny puncture-like wounds on their throats. But because they are men of science, they rationalize it.
Right. They theorize it's a stray rat biting the kids, or maybe a bat escaped from the local zoo.
Yeah, anything but the impossible. But Van Helsing sees the article, and he doesn't need to theorize. He knows.
He brings the clipping to Dr. Seward, points out the similarity of the wounds to the ones they failed to heal on Lucy's throat, and just drops the bombshell.
He tells him these wounds were not made by an animal. They were made by Miss Lucy.
And Seward's reaction is, well, it's explosive. He thinks Van Helsing is either going mad, returning to that king laugh hysteria, or just playing a really cruel, sick joke.
And honestly, if you put yourself in his shoes, can you blame him?
Not at all. Seward is a man of science who literally runs a psychiatric hospital.
He dictates his diary into a cutting-edge phonograph machine.
Yeah. So to be told that the woman he deeply loved, the woman he just buried, is now a monster eating children on a heath, it defies every law of his reality.
But beyond the scientific impossibility of it all, think about the emotional cruelty of what Stoker is doing here. During her life, Lucy was the absolute embodiment of sweetness, purity, and maternal instinct. She adored children.
Which is exactly why Stoker targets those traits. The vampiric condition doesn't just animate a corpse, it actively twists and inverts the victim's best qualities.
It's so tragic.
It really is. Stoker is exploring the theme of corrupted innocence. The vampire takes Lucy's maternal, nurturing nature and weaponizes it into something predatory.
She uses her natural sweetness to lure children in order to drain them.
It's the ultimate violation of our character.
And Van Helsing realizes he can't just debate this with Seward in a parlor. He has to drag Seward through the looking glass. He has to prove it.
Yeah, he treats Seward like a deeply skeptical jury of one. Van Helsing knows that demanding blind faith from a man of science is just going to fail.
It's not going to work.
So he builds an airtight experiential case. He takes Seward to Kingstead Churchyard at midnight, right to Lucy's tomb.
And Seward goes along, but he is fiercely resentful. He views this as a literal desecration of a grave.
He does, right up until Van Helsing opens the lead coffin and Seward looks inside.
And it's completely empty. And Seward still tries to rationalize it. I mean, I wanted to reach through the pages and shake him.
I know, it's frustrating.
Right. He immediately argues that grave robbers must have stolen the body. His denial is just bulletproof.
Because the alternative is that the foundation of the world he knows is a complete lie. So Van Helsing just plays his next card.
He brings Seward back the very next day during the daylight hours.
Exactly. They open the coffin again, and this time Lucy is inside.
And she looks spectacular, like she is radiantly beautiful. Her cheeks are full of color. Her lips are redder than ever.
But Van Helsing forces Seward to look closer.
Yeah, and they see that her teeth, specifically the canines, are noticeably longer and sharper.
This is the moment Stoker really lays out the hard mechanics of his vampires.
Yeah.
The lore drop, if you will.
Yes, the rules are established.
Van Helsing introduces the concept of the undead. They are not alive, but they are absolutely not fully dead either.
Right, they possess a dual life. By day, they are bound to sleep in a trance-like state in their designated resting place, their tomb or their boxes of earth.
And during that time, they are vulnerable.
Yeah.
But by night, they awaken and hunt.
And their physical abilities are terrifying. Seward is completely baffled as to how Lucy got out of a sealed lead coffin inside a locked stone tomb.
Yeah, Van Helsing explains that the undead can become elemental. They can slip through hairbreadth spaces, moving as mist or dust.
The physical mechanics are fascinating for sure, but the theological stakes Van Helsing introduces here are, I think, far more important.
Oh, without a doubt. This isn't just about stopping a physical predator like a rabid wolf. The vampire curse is a spiritual prison.
Right.
The actual soul of the victim is trapped inside this debased, murderous shell.
I see it almost like a spiritual quarantine zone. If they do nothing, the infection just spreads. Lucy will continue to feed, turning her victims into vampires, creating this ever-widening circle of evil.
Exactly. But if they destroy the vampire body, the curse is broken. Lucy's actual pure soul is finally released from that prison and set free to go to heaven.
Therefore, killing the vampire isn't murder, it's a necessary sacred act of salvation.
Yeah.
Which means they have to commit an unspeakable, violent act. But they can't do it yet because they have one more person to convince.
Well, two, really. But primarily Arthur Holmwood, Lucy's fiancé, and Quincey Morris.
And Arthur is the hardest skeptic of all because his grief and his love for Lucy make the very idea completely abhorrent to him.
Yeah, when Van Helsing asks for permission to cut off dead Lucy's head and take out her heart, Arthur is horrified. He vows to protect her resting place with his life.
But he does agree to go to the tomb at midnight. He has to see it for himself.
He does.
And this is where Stoker gives us one of the most chilling, iconic scenes in all of Gothic literature.
It really is a masterclass in tension.
Right. They are waiting in the shadows of the churchyard. Out of the darkness, a white figure approaches. It's Lucy, and she is carrying a child.
And when the moonlight finally hits her face, the transformation is undeniable. Stoker writes that her sweetness was turned to adamantine, heartless cruelty, and her purity to voluptuous wantonness.
Her lips are literally crimson with fresh blood.
It's such a striking image.
Let's unpack that phrase for a second, voluptuous wantonness, because I feel like this is where Victorian anxieties really bleed onto the page.
Oh, absolutely.
The overt, aggressive sexuality displayed by the vampiric Lucy seems just as terrifying to these men as her bloodlust.
It absolutely is. I mean, in Victorian society, female sexuality was heavily regulated and often completely repressed.
Right.
Vampirism acts as a release of the id. It completely destroys the moral and social order these men uphold. The vampire isn't just a physical threat. It's a threat to their entire cultural structure.
She actually uses his love as a weapon. She calls out to him saying, "Come to me, Arthur. Leave these others and come to me. My arms are hungry for you."
And Arthur is mesmerized. He's ready to walk right into her embrace.
And you realize that if he does, he's dead. And worse, he's damned.
It's a terrifying manipulation.
Yeah.
Van Helsing has to physically intervene. He leaps between them with a golden crucifix, and the vampire instantly flinches from the holy symbol.
The power of faith repels the supernatural.
Yeah.
Then Van Helsing does something brilliant. He uses the host, the sacred communion wafer mixed with a little putty to seal the door of the tomb.
He creates a holy barrier so she can't get back inside to the safety of her coffin.
She is trapped between the crucifix and her resting place, and she yields with this look of, baffled malignity. The holy objects just completely overpower her.
So they leave her locked out for the night, returning the next day during daylight when she is forced back into her trance.
The theory is over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, they must practice what Van Helsing has preached. And he tells Arthur that he must be the one to strike the final blow.
But why Arthur, though? Why make the grieving fiancé do the most horrific part of the job?
Well, Van Helsing says it's a holy act. He says, "It will be a blessed hand for her that shall strike the blow that sets her free, the hand of him that loved her best."
It's an emotional masterstroke by Stoker. I mean, if Van Helsing or Seward had done it, it would just be a clinical, barbaric mutilation.
Yeah, surgical procedure almost.
Exactly. But by having Arthur do it, Stoker elevates the violence into an act of profound, agonizing love.
The entire shift of these chapters, from creeping mystery to decisive action, it all culminates in this deeply emotional release.
Wrap your head around Arthur's position for a second.
It's unimaginable.
Imagine what it takes to completely abandon all your logic, everything you know about biology, all societal norms, and the literal law of the land to commit an act of what looks like gruesome defilement.
You have to take a heavy blacksmith's hammer and manually drive a wooden stake through the chest of the woman you were supposed to marry.
The physical exertion alone, combined with the emotional trauma,
Yeah.
it's just staggering.
And the text does not spare us the visceral details of that labor. Arthur strikes with all his might. The body writhes, it screams, her teeth clamped together.
It is violently, physically traumatic.
But the moment it is over, the demonic look vanishes.
The aftermath is so poignant. They cut off her head, they fill her mouth with garlic to prevent any return, and yet, Stoker tells us, her face returns to its sweet, peaceful purity.
The monster is gone.
Arthur kisses her dead lips one last time. She is, as Van Helsing says, God's true dead.
It functions almost like a baptism by blood, but in reverse. Through this brutal violence, they have cleansed her spirit.
So we've moved from the foggy dread of Whitby and the empty ships straight into clear, decisive action.
The rules of the vampire are now officially set for the rest of the story.
Yeah, we understand the trance, the staking, the power of sacred objects, and the absolute necessity to destroy the physical body to save the soul.
But more importantly, I think, the men are changed. They are no longer isolated individuals operating in the dark, doubting their own sanity.
Right.
They are a vanguard, united by shared trauma, and they are prepared to hunt Dracula himself.
They've seen the absolute worst, and they didn't break. I think that really reminds us that sometimes the hardest, most painful actions are the ones required to truly help the people we love. True friends will stand by you, even in the darkest, coldest tombs.
Absolutely.
But I want to leave you with a lingering thought to chew on as we close out these chapters. We discussed how Stoker inverted Lucy's purity into monstrousness.
Mm-hmm.
If Lucy, who is the very symbol of absolute goodness and nurturing love, could be so easily corrupted into a creature of heartless cruelty by a single bite, what does that say about the fragility of human morality?
That's a great question.
Are any of us truly safe from becoming the very thing we fear the most? If the line between the velvet-draped parlor and the bloody wooden stake is that incredibly thin, how well do we really know ourselves?
That's chapters 13 through 16. Lucy's death turning into something even more frightening, Van Helsing proving the existence of vampires, and Arthur helping free Lucy from the undead state. In the next episode, we'll cover chapters 17 through 20, where Mina becomes central to the group's investigation, the characters organize their records, and the hunt for Dracula's boxes begins. Thanks for listening to Chapter by Chapter Classics. If this episode helped you follow the story, follow the show in your podcast app so you don't miss the next chapter. And if you're enjoying this series, please take a moment to rate the podcast or leave a short review. It really helps other readers and students find the show.